Do you recall thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? When you did get in the business, how did you start generating new leads and new business? How did you get over that fear of picking up the phone in the beginning?
I would not be right here on this interview had it not been for your coaching.
Welcome back. Today we have another student interview. We've got another great member in our coaching program, Mr. Sean Allison, here to tell his story in the real estate industry. So Sean, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. And it truly is an honor to be here, Brian. Thank you.
Absolutely. So for context, give people some understanding how long you've been in the business and where do you sell real estate?
Yeah, so I've been in the real estate business for a little over a year now. License got approved second half of December of 2020. And I'm in Woodbridge, Virginia, which is about 30 minutes south of DC, depending on traffic.
Okay, got it. So when is your official 1 year, did you say?
It's like second half of December. I'm already past it. So it's really like, I guess, the 18th, a year and 2 weeks, if you want to put a timeline on it.
Perfect. All right, good. So this will be great because I love telling stories of like the someone's first full year in the business and the ups and downs. So this will be really good. Mm-hmm. And how long have you and I been working together?
Since April of last year.
Okay. All right. Got it.
Yeah.
So
April 2021.
Got it. All right. Perfect. So
yeah.
Let's unpack that. So first and foremost, I got to understand why out of everything you could have done, you picked, real estate as a career path. What led you down that path in the first place?
Yeah. So basically, back when I was in college, my degree is actually in biochemistry, shockingly enough, right?
Yeah.
In the sciences. And so, throughout college, I thought, I want to, go to dental school and be an orthodontist. And then it was like, wait a minute, no, I'm more passionate about chemistry. So I was torn junior year of college about, grad school for chemistry or going for dental school, right? I had strong interest in both of them, but I couldn't see myself doing either for the rest of my life, right? And what happened was, it was the beginning of last year, or no, the year before that. So this was beginning of 2020, right around January timeframe. Basically, my mom, credit goes to her, she actually came across a guy named Ryan Serhant. Sure you know of him, right?
Yep.
So #1 real estate agent in New York City, does over $1 billion a year in sales. It's insane. And she was like, hey, Sean, you should look into this guy. I think you'd really like him. Looked into him, saw his first blog, which was called the 1,000 Minute Rule Hacking Time Management, right?
Yeah.
Watched that video. That was really my first little glimpse of exposure into the real estate business. Fell in love with the guy, the way he carried himself, his personality, the way he looks at business and life. And through Ryan Serhant, I started learning more about real estate. Started to take a deep dive and watch, all his vlogs to learn more about it. And then so basically I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, right? And we sold our house in Georgia before my mom and the grandparents came here to Virginia. And the agent that sold our house down there, I called her and I was like, hey, give me some guidance here, right? So she recommended the book to me, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent by Gary Keller. Started reading that thing, fell in love with it. I loved every single word of every single page. And from there, I was like, you know what? I want to get my real estate license. So I took the pre-licensing course in, I believe it was October. And then, that's how I got into it.
Got it. All right. So that's interesting. Did you finish your undergrad?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah. I graduated in May of 2019 with a degree in biochemistry. And May of 2019 moved here to Virginia.
So you go to school, you graduate with a biochemistry degree, and then you end up selling real estate. So
right.
It's pretty interesting, right? So it couldn't be more opposite ends of the spectrum. Right. Do you recall when you first got licensed or you first got into the business, thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into?
So actually, no. So when I got into the business, typically there's this shock factor people get into and they're like, oh, wait, clients aren't just going to come to me. I have to lead generate and prospect for business. Oh, crap. This isn't what I signed up for, right? Now, I'm very fortunate that it's all the credit for that goes to Ryan Serhant because I learned about the business through him. I, saw his keynote speeches where he was talking about following up with a client for 10 years without a response. He's got a story where he had to fly to China to get a contract signed, right? These crazy, crazy stories. So I came into the business already knowing like what the right expectations were, and the fact that this is a very difficult business. This is, building this business the last year has been hands down the hardest thing I have ever done in my life.
Harder than your 4-year degree?
College and entrepreneurship are not the same thing.
No, they're not. And I would love to talk about that too in a second. So you did some research and you understood what you were getting into. So to your point, you saved yourself from what a lot of people have to go through, because they're like,
right, you
nailed it. Like, get in the business and they're like, wait, you hit it. Like, people just don't reach out to you. Like, I got to do something to go and find business. So tell me about that. So like, how did you, when you did get in the business, how did you start generating new leads and new business?
So it's funny that you asked that, because in the beginning, I had no idea what I was doing, right? I knew, Gary Keller talks about we're in the lead generation business, not the real estate business, right? We are a salesperson at the end of the day. But in the very beginning, I remember, it was so funny. Once I got my license approved, got all my realtor association set up, I asked my mentor, I was like, hey, how do I start cold calling? I actually wanted to cold call and prospect before I even got into it. I knew that I wanted to do that. Right.
Sure.
And basically she was like, oh, you can, look up the yellow pages online. That's a free way to do it. Or you can get like Mojo or RedX or other, these sources. And I was like, I'm going to take the free route for right now. Right. Because no income. Right. And so it's so funny. I Googled the real yellow pages online, found the residential page for the phone numbers, started dialing. I was terrified day one. Yeah. And no one picked up, because they were all landlines that just kept constantly ringing. And I was like, oh, all right, never mind then. And so I eventually got the Mojo single line dialer. And that was my first exposure into, actually doing prospecting.
That's amazing. So right from the beginning, you said to yourself, okay, I know, I accept the fact that I'm in a sales business. I'm in a sales career. And the foundation of being a salesperson is prospecting on a daily basis. And, because I think, Sean, people make this huge deal of like cold calling or looking for new business. And I say, well, wait a minute. I mean, that's the job of a salesperson. What did you think? Right. I mean, what did you think it was, So exactly. So how did you get over that fear of picking up the phone in the beginning, where that thing could weigh like 1,000 pounds, it feels like at some times? Like, how were you able to do that in the beginning?
So I really wasn't in the beginning, if I'm being completely honest. Like my very first day, I was scared to even click the start button on the dialer. And so once I actually had the courage to hit the start button, it says dialing in the first time. I'm like, okay, I don't know if they're going to pick up or not, right? And I remember that very first day when I started, I was like so, eager to get to 20 minutes. That's why I wanted to stop. I was like, okay, just 20 minutes, just 20 minutes. And it was terrifying watching it. It was like, this 20 minutes couldn't go by any slower, could it? But I actually, in the beginning, it was hard. I wasn't really consistent at all. I did try, don't get me wrong. But it took me a solid year to get completely over call reluctance. Yeah.
And that was through, and obviously a lot of you doing it, pushing through the pain, learning, getting more confident, knowing what to say. So what led you and I down the same path to end up working together?
So basically I had found your YouTube videos, right? Of you, calling FSBOs live and all that good stuff. And I was like, I love the way this guy talks, which I'm sure people give that to you all the time. The way that you talk, the way your scripts are worded, it's very non-confrontational, it's the epitome of the course, reverse selling, right? And so, at the end of your videos, you say, hey, schedule a free coaching consultation. I always just brush off, that's okay, it's whatever. I'll just keep watching the videos. And then one day I was just like, it just came to mind. I was like, why not? Why not do a coaching consultation, right? And so I did my consultation with Ron. And funnily enough, I was actually resistant to getting your coaching in the beginning for a very egotistical reason. And let me explain. I knew in my heart and soul, I believed in myself that I can do it. I can make it in this business, which is true. I know that I can. And the ego came in. It was like, wait a minute. I want to have the satisfaction that I was able to make it to the highest levels without having to get a coach. I can do it on my own. I can do it on my own, right? And my mom was talking to me, that's not the wisest thing to do. It's not. I learned my lesson, right? My personal mentor was like hearing me out and helping me reason through, should I get coaching or not? And what I realized was that there's really only two ways to learn something. Number one is through hard, brute experience, learning it the hard way, right?
Yep.
That's how Ryan Serhant learned in the beginning, right? He didn't have a mentor or a coach. He had to learn it as he goes, right? So either straight up experience and doing it the hard way, or number two is getting coaching. Like there's no other way to learn something. You either do it yourself and figure out and learn from your mistakes, or you learn from somebody who's already been doing it. And what my mentor told me was that, all these successful people that we follow, one thing that they had in common was that timing was important, right? And so you're at the beginning of your career. Yes, you can make it on your own. It just might take significantly longer because you have no idea you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
And then once I realized that, wait a minute, if I just get coaching, I'm basically shortening my learning curve tenfold, which is where it was an obvious decision at that point.
Yeah. I mean, the way that you explain coaching is exactly the perspective that people should have. And you're right. It's our ego that says, well,
right,
I can just do it on my own, but no one's taking that away. You absolutely can do it on your own.
Right.
What coaching is supposed to do is shorten the learning curve.
Yes,
so that's right. So that in exchange, that time saved actually turns into dollars and cents. And so has that been the case for you? Like, walk us through, since we've been working together, what are things like how are you generating business? What do your days look like? Let's unpack the whole thing.
So basically, started dialing, beginning of 2021, and had major call reluctance, right? And I even went through a really bad, span of time where I wasn't dialing for like what felt like 2-3 months, like in a row, paying for Mojo the whole time because I was thinking to myself, I'm gonna do it.
Right.
Which also taught me another important lesson. There's a difference between saying to yourself and having the feeling that you're going to do it and actually doing it. Like if you're not actually doing it, all that money just going down the toilet. You're spending money on dial you're not using. Right?
Yeah.
And then grandfather passed away in March, which that was hard. And then once I, got back on track from that, I actually decided to join a team. Okay. And I don't know if you know the backstory behind this, but basically I joined the team because it was the same, logic of, being on a team, you learn more in less time, which is true. You have, more experienced people to learn from. You typically have leads given to you instead of generating everything yourself. It's great for most new agents, I'll say.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Right. And the thing is, I got on to my team leader's team and I completely fucked myself up, right? Because what happened was, before joining his team, I was prospecting, right? I had gotten better about call reluctance at that point. And I knew that once I joined his team, I'd be going like a bat out of hell. And I wanted to do that. I was like, yeah, I'm ready to work really hard. So I took an intentional break the 2 weeks preceding joining his team. And for anyone watching this who, is in the beginning struggling with call reluctance, if you're not, in a flow and have momentum built, be very careful about how you take breaks, because taking a break can really F you up, right? Which is exactly what it did to me. Momentum was lost and I was having such a hard time getting back on the phone. And the entire time I was with him for about, I want to say 3 months. Yeah. And the entire span of that 3 months, I'm like, hey, I'm having a hard time, prospecting. I'm trying to work through it. And every time I had expressed to him that, I'm having a hard time, he came out with me with empathy and compassion because he knows how hard it is. He's a prospector, right? And then out of the blue, it completely blindsided me. I think it was about 3 months in, towards the end of our relationship, I get an email saying that I was fired from his team.
Oh, that's right.
Because I wasn't prospecting.
Yeah.
Do you know about that?
Yeah. We talked about that a little bit. Yep.
Right. So I got fired from his team because I wasn't prospecting and there was miscommunication. I would have preferred hey, you need to start doing this and help me and you need to get to active or else you're going to be gone. Right.
Yeah.
And so what happened was getting fired from the team. It was an instant gut check that happened to me that made me realize, get your shit together. You gotta get on this, right? Monthly expenses went up because I was no longer on a team. And I was like, okay, I got to get my stuff together, right? And basically, my philosophy is that whatever happens in life, good or bad, I'm thankful for all of it because there's something to learn from everything. right?
Yep.
And that was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me, because it gave me that gut check, kicked me into gear to help me get over the call reluctance. And so after that event happened, still had reluctance, but it had gone significantly down, right?
Yep.
And Walt Disney actually has a quote that says, okay, what's the quote? It's you may not realize it when it happens, but a kick in the teeth may be the best thing in the world for you. And that's what that was. It kicked me into gear and said, yo, get your shit together. And another message that it gave to me was that, hey, you talk a big game about, you want to be at Ryan Serhant's point one day, you want to get to this really hyperly big level, but don't say that if you're not going to put in the work behind the scenes to actually get there. Like, if you're not going to do the work, shut the F up, right?
Yeah.
Just don't
It's
BS
so
yourself.
good. Because it's like most of our industry, like this industry is so ego driven of people that are like talking all kinds of, this is what I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to get a Ferrari, like all this, because that's what this industry attracts. But very rarely, to your point, do we find a realtor whose actions are in line with what they say they're going to do. It's very rare. So this what now you look back on, like this blessing happens to you. The team says, hey, bye. Like you can't be here anymore. So now you find yourself back alone. So now you're prospecting. Is it daily? Like, are you to the point in your career where like, okay, I understand the importance of lead generation on a daily basis, or were you still struggling with inconsistency?
So after I got fired from the team, I struggled a little bit with inconsistency, but it wasn't anything major, right? I was maybe, I want to say maybe 50 to 60% consistent if I had to put a number on it, which isn't bad. It's also not great, but it's not bad.
Right.
And so I eventually worked it up and worked up to the point that I am now, where I am basically 98 to 99% consistent. And also too, I want to give credit to one person right now, which is a guy named Michael Fielkowski. He's a agent in Indianapolis, been in the business for 3 years, right? And I was in that creative avoidance loop back in the beginning. This was before. No, this is just after I joined your program. I was in creative avoidance, working on the marketing materials, instead of making the calls. And we had a thing going where we would role play at 7:30, and then call back again at 10, to do the pre-call script, upfront listing agreement, to get those skills in, and have a time frame in the middle where you're calling. And every time he's like, how'd your calls go? Oh, I didn't make any calls, but I got my email templates designed.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right. And then one day he was just frustrated with me and said, listen, why haven't you called? I was like, I got this marketing template done. And he goes, no, why haven't you called? Right. And he said, listen, I understand what it's like to be in your position back when I was in the beginning of my real estate career. So I'm willing to do this. I'm going to put myself on mute. You call a FSBO right now. Like put me on hold, call a FSBO, do it. I'm just like, heart starts beating out of my chest. I'm like, oh my goodness, no. Finally make the call. It goes completely off script from the first second. He was a realtor that I called. And, him basically forcing me to make the call to get over that first hump of tremendous nerves that you get was one of the best things that also could have happened to me.
That's great.
He forced me to jump in.
Yeah. You were very fortunate. I mean, before your career, the team finding this person who cared enough to say, call you out on your bullshit, to say, dude, stop, just stop. Let's make this happen. So I want to fast forward a little bit. Let's walk through what things look like today. So first and foremost, what lead sources are you prospecting and are you working today?
So I was doing FSBOs for the longest time. I had gone on, I want to say 6 or 7 listing appointments last year, which they were actual legit listing appointments. They weren't just like, previews that I thought were listing appointments.
Yeah.
But the problem was that my skills sucked at the time. And so I didn't get any of those listings. Right.
Sure.
Which also goes to show that, if a realtor is struggling right now, you have to take the emotion out of the business and focus on the data. Like, if you're failing right now, don't get emotional, say, oh, I feel badly by myself. No, look at the skills. Are your skills there yet or not? It's objective, right? And so my skills just weren't there, so I didn't get them. It's obvious. Now I haven't had, success with FSBOs yet as of right now, because I'm still working on really fine tuning that listing presentation. It's much better than it was before though.
Sure.
And even today, there's not a tremendous amount of FSBOs that do pop up in the markets. However, the ones that do pop up, some of them aren't open to working with a realtor at all. I only use the 2.0 script where you really pre-qualify them. And the ones that are open to working, like 89% of the time in this market, they sell on their own. So it's like, well, okay. So I've decided to change my, business tactic to, instead of going after the FSBOs, since it hasn't gone well data wise, maybe, the FSBOs that come in this March or so are going to, maybe that time of the year is going to be better. But I've decided to switch completely to just absentees and circle prospecting. So right now I will call the FSBOs the new ones, because why wouldn't you?
Why not? Right. Yeah,
exactly. However, my main focus is absentee owners and circle prospecting.
I love it. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, because absentee owners is a completely different call. The opportunity is greater than the for sale by owner. And so from a scheduling perspective, so you're working absentee owners, you're making circle prospecting contacts. How many contacts, Sean, are you making in a prospecting session usually?
Ooh, that's a good question. In a good session, it might be, I want to say 15 to 20, closer to the 20 mark. I had to change up my caller ID recently because I think it was showing up as spam, which plummeted the contact rate. So I've gotten that fixed. So that's improved significantly now. And so in terms of my schedule, typically I'm starting around, 9 or 9:30, and then I'm prospecting until noon to take a lunch break. However, I'm currently working on getting that down back to 8 a.m. because I really want to fine tune that 8 a.m. to noon spot to really get that in, because I've noticed that, all the top producers, they start at 8 a.m. Like most of them, I'll say, start at 8 a.m. And it's shocking how fast time flies. And if you miss that 8 a.m. window, how fast the time goes once you miss it, it's just like you're chasing your own tail trying to catch up. So
exactly right.
I'm working on getting that back down to 8 a.m.
So between right now, 9:30 and noon, you're doing 20 contacts or so, roughly, right at that ballpark?
Roughly.
Got it. Yeah, because the other thing is, like, that 8 to 10, that first 2-hour block is when we want to knock out the 20 new conversations. So at 10 a.m., all new lead gen's done. And now we've got 10 to noon to do a lot more things in the business to be more productive. And I think that's what you'll find as well. So you're doing so you're doing about 100 contacts, 400 contacts per month. What does that typically result in from a leads generated, people you're adding to your pipeline, right? Daily, weekly, monthly. And then appointments wise, what does that look like for you these days?
So in terms of leads generated, until I learn those 5 pieces of criteria from you about they've got to have a motivation. I have it literally right here, so don't forget it. Motivation, timeline, agreed to give you the opportunity to earn their business, contact info, and time frame for when to talk again. Until I had learned that, it was a lot of just contacts. They weren't actually leads, right?
Yeah.
So I would say it's about 5 total, contacts that are just, I'll give you my email address. In terms of strict leads, however, it's probably typically I've been getting 1 to 2 per day in terms of really strong leads. They actually have a timeline and a motivation to sell. And so my goal right now is to be setting 1 to 2 listing appointments per week.
All right. So that's perfect. And the reason I say that's perfect is let's get into the data a little bit, right? So let's get the chemist out of you a little bit and talk about some data and some analytics. Well,
right.
Because here's why. Here's what you just said. And I want to give context to the people that are going to watch this video, Sean, is when we look at baseline average conversion ratios from contact to lead generated should be about 10%. And lo and behold, that is exactly what you're experiencing, right? You're still building your skills, but right now, 20 conversations a day gets you 1 to 2 actual leads. These are actual sellers that fit the criteria of leads that you and I have worked through. That's number one. Phenomenal. The next conversion with the lead sources that you're calling is, on average, it takes about 100 contacts to set 1 listing appointment. You're doing 100 contacts a week and you end up with 1 or 2 listing appointments, 4 per month, right? And so you're right in line with all of the baseline conversions that we've been tracking for over a decade. And so that makes a lot of sense. When an agent starts to establish these conversion ratios, it becomes easier for them to plan for their business, because they say to themselves, right, I know if I do these activities on a consistent basis, that it should lead me to 3 or 4 really good listing appointments per month. And so let's talk about listing appointment conversion ratios. So if you go on 3 or 4 appointments these days, how many listings does that typically yield you?
So as of today, I have not gotten my first listing in terms of from my own efforts yet. Basically, going after the absentees, going for the phone appointment. And I found that, I guess, is also just quality of the appointment itself.
Sure.
That sometimes the phone appointment is less likely to be picked up on since you're not meeting the person, in person. But basically, I've been refining the listing presentation skills since, I want to say, I think it was towards the end of last year. So the entire first year, I hadn't really, solidified the listing consultation. I literally brought a checklist with me to the appointment and went down everything
Sure.
one by one, which made it boring as hell for the prospect because they felt like they were watching me going, step 1, okay, step 2, check. It's like, have a conversation with the person. It shouldn't be presentational, it should be conversational.
That's right.
Right. And so I didn't get that skill set really into myself until closer towards the end of last year. And so that's the part that I'm solidifying right now to basically increase that conversion rate. And I do have a couple of people to follow up with literally after this interview to basically say, hey, what's up? In terms of listing, I have 2 people in the pipeline right now who, one of them is definitely, and they're both interested in selling. I just need to actually follow up with them and say, hey,
Sure.
how's it going? And so the actual appointment, for the 2 people who I feel like I have a strong, which feelings mean nothing, but take it for what it's worth. The 2 people that I feel like I have a strong, ability to get this, like it's probably going to go through most likely, they are the people who came from the much better listing presentation, not the one that was absolute crap from last year.
Yeah. Well, here's the interesting thing is that, there's a progression to learning, right? That's the other thing, because for the last couple of months, you've been working on your phone skills, because it all starts with that. And you had to go through that whole process of learning all of the pain of like overcoming call reluctance, then being able to have a good conversation where you can generate an actual lead on the phone, right? Now that you've been able to do those things, you're right on it, where it's like, now it's time to prioritize your presentation so that when you do set an appointment, you can go there and convert it. So that's really exciting for you to work on. So let me just ask you this. If we went back and you started all over again, let's just go back a year, right? You got relicensed, but you've gone through all of the pain that you've gone through to get to where you are right now. What would you have done differently? Or what advice would you give yourself that maybe the other agents watching this video could benefit from?
That is a really good question. So it was a lot of pain in terms of call reluctance. It was tough. People don't realize how difficult it is if they're not in the real estate business. What would I have done differently, or your advice I'd given myself? I would say there's no reason to be designing your marketing materials focused strictly on the lead generation. That's all that matters.
I didn't pay you to say that, did I?
No, you didn't.
It's the truth. That's the thing. I try to keep trying to scream from the mountaintop, Sean. Like in everything that I do, all the work that I do is helping agents understand that one point.
Yes.
That the needle in your business is not going to be moved by how sexy your business card is. It's just not.
Right.
No one cares what your logo is. Not one person gives a what your logo looks like, how your business card feels, what your website looks like. Right. The seller or a buyer makes their decision to hire you or not based on how you make them feel, whether or not they're confident in your abilities to get the job done. And what your folder looks like doesn't play any part in that decision. But so many agents obsess over it. I think that's really, really good advice.
Right. And there are some new agents who have come into the office recently that I've been helping mentor. And what I've told them is that nobody's going to hire you because you have a great marketing pamphlet, marketing material. They're going to hire you because of you.
That's right.
They're looking for the agent to actually hire. Now, so there's 2 really big things I would say. Number 1 is that, especially if we're getting over, call reluctance, getting through the prospecting and the pain that comes with that, a big thing for me was that I was afraid of the fact that I didn't know what to say. Oh, what do I say to this and to that? But here's the thing. You don't start anything great, right? A baby doesn't pop out the womb and start walking on day one. You got to practice, right?
Yep.
And a baby doesn't fall down and say, oh, walking's not for me. You know, they keep going until they get it. And so in the beginning, you have to this is a phrase that I really swear by. You have to give yourself permission to suck.
That's right.
You have to give yourself permission to suck. And number two is definitely understand the difference between income generating activities and non-income generating activities, because it seems like a simple concept, but when you're actually in the real estate game, sometimes it can be difficult to take a bird's eye view, take a step back and see, you know, all the components of the business and see what matters, what doesn't. So definitely start working on the skill of, you know, this thing that I'm, you know, prioritizing and giving time to, is it actually going to be, you know, producing me income? Or is it this just, you know, some, you know, marketing material is the best example, some marketing material. Is it some form of creative avoidance, you know?
Love it. Dude, it's great advice. I mean, you said at the beginning of this interview, like the time you were spending in income generating activities when you first started versus what you're doing now. I think you said like 90 something percent of your time now is spent in activities that lead to income.
Yes.
That's probably one thing that if you rewind the clocks based on your advice right now, like you would just do that from day one. And I think that's what you're suggesting today. Is that right?
Exactly. Do that from day one. Just focus on the income generating activities. I mean, you can work on your business cards if you want, but do it on a weekend or at some time that's not in your income generating block. Right.
Yep. Well, here's the thing. Let me get your advice on this real quick. So agents have like all kinds of different income goals, right? Most want to make this magic 100,000. So let's just use that for this conversation. The thing I always ask an agent is this: would you hire somebody on your team, pay them $100,000 salary to do what you're doing every day? And the answer to that question is always no. Like, would you pay $100,000 salary to an assistant to make a logo on Fiverr? Would you pay $100,000 salary to an assistant to fuck around on your website? The answer is always no. And to your point, when you look in the mirror and you have an honest conversation with yourself to say, listen, I'm a salesperson. I'm the CEO of my business. My job is to generate revenue for my company. I need to spend the majority of my time, I say 80+% per day, in income generating activities, lead generation and prospecting. And I think you're right. If an agent can do that from day one, where they will be after their first year in the business, and we have many of them in our program that end up making 100K in their first 12 months. But the agents that don't always go back and wish they had. Would you agree with that?
Right. Absolutely. I'm somebody who wishes that I was focusing on the right things from the very beginning. And so, you know, one of the training videos that you have in your program is called Face Off with the Men in the Mirror. You couldn't have picked a better title for that, because at the end of the day, you know, real estate has such a high failure rate. I think it's like 82% for the first year. And a big part that I believe is because people can't conquer themselves, right? You have to be able to overcome your own, you know, lacking skill sets, your own insecurities, your own, you know, basically overcome your old self, right? And the funny thing is that during your entire journey of saying, okay, I'm in this place right here, and I'm struggling or not, you know what the right answer is. You know in the heart of your hearts that I should be prospecting right now. You're just choosing not to do it because it's uncomfortable.
That's right.
And so you really have to have an honest conversation with yourself about how badly do you really want this?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always say people don't have business problems. They have personal problems that show up in their business.
Oh, I love it. I love that.
Right. I mean, that's what's happening. And so we talk a lot about inside of our coaching calls, creating your new character. Like if someone's never made six figures before, well, their current like situation, their current life isn't capable of making 100,000 because they never have. So in order to create a new level of income, they have to level up to a new character. Right. And that's the part I think you're talking about. And I couldn't agree more. So this has been a lot of fun. I want to end with this last question for you. What is your 2022 goal? Because what I'd like to do is maybe do another interview at the beginning of 2023, and you would have learned a lot more over this year. So we're making this in the middle of January, 2022. What is your goal for this year?
Yeah. So my prospecting minimum goal is 4 hours a day. Like I said, I'm like 99% consistent on that. So that's the goal. However, I'm going to be ramping it up even more. I'm going to be at the point where like you teach in your video for how to sell 100 homes a year, you're either on an appointment or looking for one. You're on the phone all day if you don't have an appointment. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm ramping up to that, you know, in the next couple of weeks or so, you know, building that stamina to go from 4 all the way, basically doubling it. Right.
Yeah.
Which is great because, you know, it's amazing how you grow. In the beginning, 20 minutes terrified me. Now 4 hours feels like normal. It's like, okay.
I know.
It's crazy how you grow.
Yeah.
But income goal is I'm going for actually $200,000 net income, which equates to 300 GCI. And it comes down to 30 transactions.
I love it. I love it, man. I'm super excited for you. I love working with you, by the way. I always enjoy our conversations, and yeah, best of luck this year, and keep at it, man. Cause I can't wait to tell your story 12 months from now, and just the progression that you keep making year after year.
I love it. I sincerely appreciate that. And before I let you go, I have to give you a huge thank you for your coaching and your program. You have seriously shaved at least like a solid 3 years off my learning curve. And I would not be right here on this interview had it not been for your coaching. And oh, one other thing, it's so funny. You know, when I got let go from the team, I told myself that I'm going to get to a better point. I'm going to get really good. And one of the metrics that I had given myself was, I'm going to get interviewed by Brandon. And when I got the message saying he wants to interview, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that's manifestation for you right there. And so basically, you know, one final thing that I'll leave the viewers with is that there's a quote that Ryan Serhant references and attributes a lot of his success to, which is if you take care of the work will take care of you.
Love it,
if
man.
you do the work, you will succeed. And so thank you for all that you've given in your coaching program. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. It means a lot. I mean, every time somebody says something like that, it's like just makes my life's work really meaningful. So thank you, Sean, for that. And we'll look forward to the future, my friend. So I appreciate the time you've poured back into this industry. And I'm sure we'll talk to you soon, brother. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Talk to you soon, Sean.